Hello. Hello and welcome to another edition of Analysts Gone Wild. We got episode 29. Robert Kramer here with more insights and strategy. I cover data, ERP, supply chain, a few other things, and I got a great team on the board today. Let's go around and kind of introduce ourselves and then kind of get into the subject matter. Brian, you want to kick it off where you're at and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I'm with Infotech Research Group, where I cover emerging technology, tech trends, CIO priorities. Been on the show before. Happy to be back.
Thanks.
Looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. Donald, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Donald Farmer. I've got my own consultancy, Tree Hive Strategy. I specialize in data and analytics strategy. And I'm a product guy. I've been building products all my life.
Great. Michael, how you doing today?
Doing great, thanks. So I'm the founder and CEO of Arion Research. Been around for about 4 years there, ex-IDC, ex-G2. I tend to focus a lot these days on agentic AI and this intersection with CX and other enterprise apps as well. But that's really been the focus. I have a book coming out next month, hopefully on agentic AI. So I got to get a little plug in there.
Wow. Thanks for telling us that. We'll look forward to talk about it. Maybe we can dive into that and how it relates to a lot of great things happening. Sam, over to you.
Yeah. So, Michael, I have a question for you. So when you do, what is that called? Book inauguration ceremony or whatever? Are we going to be doing a little showcase here on this show?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cover page. Yeah, let's do that, guys. Let's do that. Awesome. So Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Our focus is really enterprise software and host of WBS Talks as well. Robert, over to you.
Great. It was interesting. We were chatting before this, everyone, and I know that supply chain is a big deal before we get into all the waves of AI and how that's affecting enterprise technology and all the announcements that are going on. But we were talking about supply chain. Obviously, there's been an enormous amount this year because of the government and how that's affecting tariffs and things like that. But we were getting into how it's downstream into coffee. Yeah. And do you guys drink a lot of coffee? And if you do you like the mom and pop shops or the Starbucks, or are they all affected right now with the supply chain? What do you guys think? I think, Brian, you probably got some information on that. You're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute.
I actually just go with the direct IV drip into the vein for coffee. So I skip the whole having to go out to any Starbucks or mom and pop shop. But yeah, we were talking about it. I mean, here in Toronto, I've been feeling like I am paying a lot more for coffee for like months now. So it's tough out there.
What's more mean? Like a $4 cup is $7 or a $4 cup is $4.25?
How much more mean?
Meaning, so when you're paying more for a cup of coffee, is it like $4 a cup is now $7 or $4 a cup is now $4.25? How big of a difference is it?
Yeah, again, I don't know if I don't often go out for coffee, right? So I'm buying the stuff at the grocery store, and I'm used to a tin that was like $15 is now $20. So that's okay. The type of thing I'm seeing.
So 25% increase.
Brian, I have a question for you. How's that IV shot one? Is that cheaper than the regular one? Because I'm open to that.
Yeah. That's the hack. You got to go high volume, get the bags delivered. So that's the way to go.
Well, it's interesting. And then, we've had recent conversations about AI with sports, and we talked a little bit about the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Looks like the Toronto Blue Jays made a lot of moves. Did AI help, Sam? And you seen a difference yet, or it's too early to tell?
I mean, last 2 days, they were in Colorado, and this was one of the heaviest hitting, I guess, that anybody has seen. But it was primarily because of the field, not because of the players. I guess that's what we are sensing. So I don't know if it is AI, but they have done one of the best performance, which I do not expect for the next 2 series because they are playing Dodgers and Cubs. So, yeah, it's not going to be even close.
Do you think that AI has enhanced baseball? Do you think it's mean to make it more, I guess, features and for fan experience, or do you think it's because the game's kind of gotten to the point, I guess, like 5-10 years ago, where it was like 3 hours long. Now it's a little bit more sped up. But do you think AI has been a advocate for Major League Baseball, or do you think it's got some more work to do?
So my take on this is going to be baseball is obviously a very data-driven game, overall, Robert, and you cover this a lot more than you, I guess, right? So obviously data is one version, but when you look at the generative AI and ChatGPT, it's a slightly different take, right? So how that is going to impact the sports, my take on this is going to be a lot of people are going to be jobless, even in the sports world, because the analysis or the researchers or the back office, the kind of work that they did to translate these insights for the front office, which did not really have much of the educational background for the most part, right? So now that's going to be a lot of things are going to be automated from the agentic perspective. I think they are trying a lot of different things, such as the automated strikeouts. I think they had tried that in the All-Star game. I don't know if that is going to be adopted or not, but we'll find out, I guess.
Okay. Well, we'll see. It's a lot of activity. I always see the sports industry as another industry that's equal to some of the ones that we cover. So let's get into the first one. We're dealing with Deltek. They announced that their new AI capabilities within their GovWin IQ, which is really a big thing. And I think we got some things that Michael wants to add to this, but it's a comprehensive initiative to transform government contractor operations. It includes Ask Della opportunity chat. This is a AI-powered proposal generation for, I guess, solicitation documents. It should help for communicating to the different types of markets that they're working within the government sector for customers. It should reduce the proposal development time. This should be a win for all fronts, but Michael, I know you have some experience working with this company. There was a big acquisition that was made. I think that you were talking about it in 2016 that was done with Roper Technologies. But Michael, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I've been working with Deltek off and on for about 20 years. I actually did the market sizing for their S1 when they went public, like 20 years ago, and that GovWin is actually an acquisition as well. It was, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, and if you think about it, it really was like a community and a research organization. So they go through and pull out opportunities in the government, in different spaces around federal and state and local, and people, government contractors can go in and for a subscription price, get access to opportunities, and probably just as much, they can also collaborate with each other. So, a lot of government opportunities are very broad, and you need, maybe need one partner, 2 or 3 partners, depending on kind of what it is, to go together and bid together to have an opportunity to actually win. So it's kind of a network and also an information source for a lot of government contractors. And they value this highly because, again, it gets access very quickly to a lot of opportunities that you might not find otherwise. So when I saw this, I think this is great. And I've actually interviewed their head of product 2 or 3 times on my podcast about Della and how they've been moving through adding AI capabilities throughout all of their products. So this is just kind of the next step. And for GovWin, this is a really excellent change in the way that users interact with the system, giving it conversational chat to be able to go through and search and find opportunities and find partners. I think that's going to be a big help, makes it much easier to use. And then the second thing, and this is a very difficult thing, as you know, especially the federal government has a lot of rules and regulations about anything they do. And that's particularly true in procurement and contracting. And so having an AI-powered proposal generator is an extremely time-saving, valuable, tool that will get used quite a lot. So I think both of these are really positives for their customer base.
I mean, is it that easy to use? I mean, there's got to be some prerequisites that need to be in place for this just to happen. I mean, a lot of times when you see these, it makes it you feel like there's like an easy button, and there isn't an easy button. So right, and it's a huge misnomer in this. And when these vendors unleash their innovations, that everybody wants that new candy, but you can't have it unless you do, you make the candy. So
yeah, I mean, I think in this case, it really does simplify what was a fairly, arduous search process. So it helps make this a bit easier to find those opportunities and get answers on, how to bid on it, what to bid, what partners you might need, that sort of thing. So having a conversational UI is, obviously we see that across a lot of different parts of the enterprise, but I think that's going to be a really big benefit here, because you're talking about massive list of opportunities across all these different government agencies, and so being able to parse through and find those exact opportunities that match your profile or yours with a partner, that's really valuable. And then, like I said, just having a tool to help with proposals, that's a huge a time saver, because it's such a pain to put these proposals together for the government.
Yeah, I agree. It is also, they need to see it in certain formats, so it's critical for them to be in what they're expecting. So Donald or Brian, what do you guys think?
Yes, I'm looking at this. I'm actually thinking about it more from the government perspective. Like, I could see how this would be incredibly useful for Deltek's customers and the vendors that are regularly providing services to the government. It's win-win if I can automate some of my contract discovery, some of my RFP creation. Why wouldn't I want to do that? It's a huge amount of work, and I want to make that as easy as possible. It's that annoying administrative stuff that we want AI to automate away for us. But from the government perspective, I'm almost wondering, is this automating a process that's not designed very well, right? The government procurement has received a lot of criticism. It's rigid, it's overly complex, it limits the amount of companies that can bid on it. Up here in Canada, our federal government tends to award a lot of contracts because they require a certain size and scale. So a lot of contracts don't go to the homegrown Canadian firms, but to the American firms, right? So they get a lot of criticism for that, saying, why can't you be more open to startups and actually being a customer that would help startups grow into scale ups, right? So I look at something like this and I'm thinking, are we just going to automate that and make it even a more entrench that rigid process, because only the existing contractors are the ones that have access to this and can now automate that, and if you're on the outside, it's even harder to get in.
Right.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about GovWin is it's a subscription service, so anybody can subscribe to it and pay the fee and get into it. So at least from that perspective, it is kind of levels the playing field a bit for giving access to any government contractor or aspiring government contractor to find that information. So from that perspective, probably does help a little bit with that, Brian.
Yeah.
Well, I'd kind of like to ask a little bit about that, and maybe you could help me out here, Michael, because the clients I've spoken to who have looked at Deltek, I've always said it's a really expensive system for them. And they are typically startups, as Brian was talking about, and they would love to get into government procurement, but they found Deltek very expensive. So I called up a couple of them before this call and said, what do you think of these AI capabilities? And their answer, which was entirely legit, was, well, is this going to be more expensive, or is it going to make it cheaper for us? And they weren't clear on what the answer is. So I think that's actually very important. And I would love to see more startups getting into government procurement. Getting that imagination, getting that innovation, getting that entrepreneurship in would be great, rather than the big, well-established consultancies who have their own problems, which are very similar to government problems of rigid processes and expensive and overstaffed systems. But if Deltek don't make this cheaper for people to get in, then they're not really leveling the playing field. But what do you think about that?
So I would say,
I had a quick question, because it's going to probably give you, Michael, a chance to answer two questions.
Okay.
What does expensive mean? I mean, I don't. People say that to me. I don't know that word is it's kind of generic, because expensive might be that it takes care of everything I need and it makes me more efficient. I get more revenue. so expensive could mean that I need that, all the indirect costs it could save me from. So Michael, coming back to you, is expensive mean that it's worth it, or is expensive mean it prices me out of the ballpark?
So I would say, first of all, I haven't really heard that the government contractors that I've talked to, and big and small, and there are a large number of smaller contractors involved in GovWin that have complained about that price. There are certainly some customers that I've talked to that say, well, this product's a little expensive or that, because they have a very broad portfolio. They do a lot more than GovWin. But I will say that for Della and all the AI capabilities, they went down the path of not charging extra for those. So I assume that the same is true in the GovWin offering, because they haven't added pricing and cost to any of their other applications when they added Della capabilities, which they have been doing now for 2.5, 3 years, I guess. So I would be surprised if that's the case. But yeah, I guess that to me, the value for GovWin and what I've heard from the companies that are members of the of the program, of the network, that it is a great way to find both opportunity and also opportunity as a partner. And one of the things, Don, you mentioned the fact that smaller companies, big companies tend to take over a lot of these big contracts. That's true, but what happens is underneath that, a lot of small contractors end up as the next level down subcontractor to do portions of what they do really well. So that does, in fact, a lot of times open up opportunities for them to get engaged with a larger contractor that needs very specific, capabilities that they want to put into that bid. So I've always heard it as a positive, but I mean, I'm sure pricing and expensive is a relative term, right? So I guess there probably are plenty of people that say it's expensive. I don't know.
Well, is it a barrier? Is it a barrier to entry? Is really
that's a good point.
The question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
But you were absolutely right. You made a very good point about subcontracting, and to be fair, some of the small companies I know who complain about the price of Deltek, they are indeed subcontracting to other companies, and that makes it effective for them. So fair enough.
Probably the main the main point, right, with the risk with the talking about the price and the business model here, right? I'm assuming this is like a SaaS offering, so I'm paying for access to Deltek's contract search and the Smith services does the RFP creation for me. Doesn't guarantee that I'll get any of these contracts, right? So the value isn't guaranteed. I just get the seat to try and use the tools and apply them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you get access to it, and it has a lot of opportunities there. So yeah, it's a subscription offering. Not much software involved in this. I mean, it is more of the data and parsing the data. So, but yeah.
Does Deltek compete with like low code platforms like Appian, because they have something similar, but it's a business process application workflow, and it seems like indirectly they would compete. But
it's not. No, it's really not the same thing. You think of this more like a network or a community that shows the data from all these different agencies in one place, so you can look for opportunities and also look for partners. It's different than this is not a platform. Maybe you could call it a search platform or something. But now some of their other tools, they do certainly have some workflow and that sort of thing in some of their other project-based ERP tools, which they have a couple of different offerings there. Cost Point, which is kind of the standard in government contracting, for example, is an older platform, but it's a platform that's used across a lot of contractors in the federal government business in the U.S.
Yeah, guys, so let's be very clear. I guess overall, anything that touches ERP becomes very expensive, and life is not meant to be fair, and it's never a level playing field. In baseball, my buddy gets $500 million contract. A rookie in this context would be a startup, does not even get $5 million, even though they might be hitting much higher average, at this time. So again, life is not meant to be fair. There are always going to be barriers. But for the most part, I guess some more comments. Robert, to your point, these guys are real ERP vendor. And this play, when you look at this particular play, this is more of the data-powered CPQ-centric play, I guess. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to summarize or closest. I know Michael probably does not like that. But even your HubSpot is trying to do that. Pipedrive is trying to do that a little bit. But in this case, obviously, you are getting a lot of proprietary intel from the government perspective. The biggest benefit that you are going to get, and I know everybody hates working with government, but government is one of the most predictable revenue stream that you can find even in down economies, to be completely honest. We would love to get more business from the government, but it's hard. It's meant to be hard. That's not changing anytime soon. So the biggest headache that you are avoiding here is because they are telling you whether they are going to win this or not going to win this. What are the challenges that you are going to get, with respect to RFP? So that's a huge intel to avoid any sort of challenges. Michael, I'm going to have a question for you, and I'm doing my own market research here because you spent so much time on this. We have not done a lot of RFPs lately that involved, cost point, but we do get a lot of customers, and they are moving away from cost point at this point of time. So I don't know what is happening in that portfolio, because when I look at this announcement, I look at that they are sort of trying to upgrade that. But what I'm hearing from the customers is that it's being sunset. So is it being sunset because they are moving to cloud, or are they migrating to a different product because they have a lot of products in their portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see all of those things are probably true. Some are moving to different products, but cost point is a little long in the tooth, but it's certainly gotten a lot of attention from them, and they've moved it forward in a lot of ways. Has some good AI capabilities embedded already, and that sort of thing. Some of their other products that they bought, like Economy, they bought, and Vantage Point, and several different other project, all based on project-based industries or contract manufacturing. Those are the two verticals that they play in heavily, and all their products are oriented towards companies that do project-based work. So the project's the center of everything versus the product in a lot of ERP systems. So from that perspective, it does help businesses that are oriented that way, because the process much more closely mimics what they need to do. And of course, AI is playing a big role in project management in a lot of different areas, everything from help them find resources to, in this case, help them find opportunities. So
sounds good. So Sam, should we hit the next one?
Yeah, you can do that.
So
just one call out for the audience. If you guys are in the audience, and if you have any sort of comments, questions, stories, we always like to cover them, hear them. So I know that Dinesh is probably there in the audience. Thank you so much for joining. So Robert, we can go to the next one.
Please ask away. We're here to answer questions. We like the collaboration. It brings another element. So let's talk about IFS, acquisition of TheLoops. IFS is ERP, enterprise cloud, and industrial AI software application. TheLoops is a Silicon Valley-based innovator of autonomous AI agent technology. They focus on operations. So the acquisition, what does it do for IFS? I think it does do a lot of different things. It delivers AI agents specifically for the industrial area, participate in the workflows to help with the compliance. I think what IFS is talking about is they're shifting from tracking the work to actually doing the work. There's a lot of complexities around, letting these agents loose and how they can be effective, because there's setup, there's issues with trust, things of that nature, but potentially can deliver significant operational gains for the customers. And it establishes IFS as to have one of this, one of the first to market industrial grade agentic AI offerings, but their competitors, I believe, do too, which is SAP and Oracle. But you have to chime in on that one, Sam. Sam, you probably do have some pretty good influence thoughts on this. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, they have taken a very interesting direction overall from the IFS perspective, and I personally like to see them as very, very unique ERP vendor. And I would probably put even Deltek in that bucket as well, because Deltek has a very different offering, where they really differentiate and where they shine. So from the IFS's perspective, yes, they do some business in manufacturing, but their core is always going to be the whole asset management, the field service, aerospace, MRO, maintenance, etc. That's where they really shine. And their recent investments, I would say at least 3 of them, the last one that they have done, they are really trying to improve the asset-centric capabilities, a lot more predictive. This is slightly more generative, but the capabilities are very similar. I don't know if any other ERP vendors are acquiring the similar capabilities. These guys are very different. They are attacking very different market. So, I mean, I am personally excited about this particular alignment acquisition. And I don't think anybody else is going to do that, because IF has a very different target market.
Yeah, but how can they integrate this technology like seamlessly that quick? I mean, it seems a little strange to me, because these systems are so complex. How are they promoting it that it's available or can be available soon?
Yeah, so
well,
I guess
from a multi-agent system, I mean, from an agentic platform, they're using MCP to do the integration. Yeah. I'm sure that's the standard, right? Sure. And particularly in this case, the interesting part I thought was the collaboration and coordination point, right? Because if you're using multi-agents, that's actually one of the difficult things, is to manage that process, having multiple digital workers and having them be able to work with them, each other, and also with humans, and work together to collaborate on whatever that activity might be. So I thought was interesting from that perspective, giving a orchestration platform for multi-agent systems, which is in fact something that's going to be big in this industrial area as well.
So that's seamless. I get it what you're saying, but that sounds perfect to me.
Well, nothing's perfect, right? but it's a good move in the direction towards better, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the right question to ask about integration. With IFS here, the way they approach their AI solutions is through different vertical domains, right? You look at how they deliver their ERP and the AI services on top of that. They're targeting solutions that are tailored for aerospace, for defense, for manufacturing, for telecom. So the question, there's a lot of different systems that there's going to have to be integrated with, and not all of those have MCP protocols developed from the vendors today, right? So that might require some custom integrations to be coded, and is that going to be coming from IFS here or the loops? Potentially, I would expect that's part of the value they bring. But the question there is, how well will it really work, right? And then the other question is observability, like especially with a lot of these critical industries. We know generative AI can hallucinate, right? And we also know it can be like a black box where the outcomes aren't clear. How did you come up with that answer? Why is it giving me this output? And if you have to go back and audit that because you're regulated, it can be a problem. So, how far can you really go with, if we're using LLMs and generative AI here, which it looks like IFS wants to and plans to, how far can we go in actually automating with that in these different industries?
Mm-hmm. Donald, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a particular problem here. First of all, that I don't see how I don't see how the loops becomes at any time soon native to IFS. I don't think it's going to be an IFS native application. I just don't see that happening. But that's not necessarily a problem for agentic systems, because they're designed to be an autonomous entity. So, the loop can be somewhat autonomous from IFS, which then raises for me the interesting question is which direction does the value arrow point? Does IFS provide real value to the loops users, or does the loops provide additional value to IFS users? And given that they're going to be quite autonomous, I think that's going to be a really interesting question to see how that works out. The loops actually.
I was going to say, I suspect the latter. No, I think you're right. I think the latter is probably more likely.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the Loops have done some really interesting work in managing really quite complex industrial systems. The workflow, the way in which they manage the autonomy is actually pretty compelling. So let's see if management and the structure of the company can be as autonomous as the agents, this could be quite successful.
I think the value that IFS brings here is that it's actually providing the data stores, and it has the enterprise data that is going to be accessed by the agents provided by the loops, right? So there is value going both ways, and you need both parts of that ecosystem. And that's why we're trying to design for this multi-agent orchestration sort of build in the architecture, is that we're able to automate processes while keeping our data in the systems that we already have it.
Yep.
Yeah. So very interesting comments, and I'm going to have one question probably for or assessment, I guess, and then I'm going to watch how Michael is going to react to that assessment. So in this case, I know every single ERP vendor is trying to do this. They are trying to accomplish this through many different means. Everybody is going to have some sort of agentic workflow, and obviously some are using MCP, some are using proprietary tools, and some are either partnering with them or acquiring these capabilities. In this case, this is going to be acquisition, but overall, in terms of the bucketing and positioning, let's say if I were to draw a comparison here and I said, you know what, Loops is probably similar to PyPhi. How would you feel about that, Michael? And I know that we have covered a lot of stories with respect to PyPhi, and a lot of companies are partnering with them as opposed to developing either their own or acquiring something.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have an agentic platform to do agentic AI. You have to have a way to orchestrate, coordinate, collaborate, human to agent to agent, and those standards, MCP, and there's an agent to agent protocol, A to A. All these things are important, and I think either some cases companies are going out and partnering in to bring in a platform, and I think actually we have a platform story later in this deck, I think. But then you also seeing plenty, and I mean, Salesforce is a great example. Agentforce is another platform, could do this. It's not built to do this out of the box, but it could do it if you had the right data, built the right agent. So I mean, to me, it depends. It's that build buy question. If it's quicker to acquire a platform that already has those capabilities and then integrate, it seems to me like that's a logical business choice versus the other, which could be build your own. If you have the data, you have the resources to build, maybe that's a better solution for you.
Yeah. I think we had a question, Sam, from the previous. If you want to.
Yeah, happy. No. So cost point is actually for government contractors and contract manufacturers. So it's not really a government ERP. It's a government contractor ERP and also a contract manufacturing ERP.
That's a very important distinction, and thank you so much for highlighting that. And I don't know, Michael, if you want to touch on how that would differ, because you are right that government ERPs are going to be very different, and that would be something like Tyler Technologies. This is very different, even though they deal with a lot of different, government entities, government functions. But that's a very important distinction.
Yeah, and they have some integration points. There's some reports and things that they have to play to the government, and so from a contractor perspective that's useful. But from a government ERP system, and back in my PeopleSoft days, I implemented an ERP system for the US Mint, and I can tell you that the only reason we were successful with that was because we didn't have to meet government accounting principles, because they are very different than private sector. But because the U.S. Mint is an independent agency that can operate with outside of that was okay. But from a normal government agency perspective, their accounting processes don't fit normal ERP systems.
Great. Anything else on this subject? Should we hit the next one? Sam, anything in closing on this?
No, I think let's hit the next one.
Okay. So this Intellistack, they're going through a rebrand. I guess the original name was FormStack. So they have a rebrand, and then they have a launch of Streamline. So this is an interesting subject, and it goes along lines. They were a digital forms company, document generation. Now they're going to more of a comprehensive automation platform. So they're rebranding to Intellistack, and then they're launching Streamline, which is a no-code AI-driven process automation platform. They're claiming zero data retention architecture. Does this help, them? Does it help the customers? What's it do for the industry? Does it put pressure on their competitors like Microsoft or Zapier? What are the challenges ahead? I think this seems like a pretty good move for them, kind of going away from their past into a more extensive plan. So I guess Michael or Donald, what do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, they definitely, if you look at them, they were kind of old school process automation tool. And now they're trying to rebrand, as everybody in the process automation world is, to include AI. And this I mean, the name change makes sense. The capabilities, I mean, obviously zero data retention is important. Why move data around inside your business if you don't have to? It's much safer and much easier to bring in a system that can use federated data. So that seemed positive. And I suspect that, it's almost like the RPA vendors have been moving towards AI and intelligent RPA. I got the same feeling from this announcement, right? It's we used to do it this way, and now we've added AI, so it's intelligent.
Right.
So just to be clear, Michael, in terms of the name change, it makes sense because everything has to be AI native in 2025. Is that what it is?
Yes. Actually, it's in 2026. It has to be AI.
Yeah. Makes sense.
You know what? So there is one thing that really interests me about this story, which is the relocation of the company from Indiana to Denver. And, presumably that's because it's easier to hire people in Denver, or you get, there are more people working in this field in Denver than in Indiana. But Indiana's not like the back of beyond. It's not, it's not as if there's no talent there. So I wonder about this move. What does that say about the need to be close to talent as opposed to, people remote working? Couldn't they remote work into Indiana and have still retain their Indiana headquarters? It just strikes me as being a very expensive thing to do, as Denver's a much more expensive place than Indiana. Why do that when, in fact, the whole point of this technology is that it's automation and runs remotely? They're not eating their own dog food, maybe. But you see what I mean? I mean, I just find this an odd. I find this not necessarily strange, but I'm surprised that they make this move.
Yeah, I thought Brian would have a lot of intel in this particular market, I guess. I mean, this is probably your bread and butter, right, Brian?
When I'm looking at this, I'm wondering about their whole approach with the no-code aspect here, like in an age, we just talked about how everything has to be AI native, right? And they're calling themselves Intellistack. So, they're coming in with this no-code branding. I think that's not the right message, because no code, it's very like citizen developer, like 2022 era type of orientation, where it's like, okay, we're going to give you a UI solution so that you can automate filling out the forms in your different aspects of your workflow. Like these days, I'm looking for an AI agent that's going to be able to fulfill my data contracts and deliver the right information to the right place when I need to, right? Not like stack together a workflow through a series of visual boxes or something that will get me there in the end. So I'm just wondering about this framing of the product in the no-code sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little bit of evolution from a space that is a bit behind from a process automation perspective. And so lets them start to tell a better story. I mean, if you look at some of the RPA vendors, they kind of went through this phase too of, oh, look at us now, we have AI. Oh, look at us now, it's something better, different, more. So that, to me, that sort of seemed like the story there.
Yeah, what I do like about this. Sorry, what I do like about this is the federated data governance aspect, right? Where it's putting the power of domain or the power of data in the domain owner's hands, where you're accountable to manage it. You have to you have the tools to access the data where it resides and then apply it to the area that you need. We don't have to copy it around. We don't have to have a centralized team that's tracking where the data is flowing within the enterprise. So I think it supports that trend well.
Yeah. Even going back to your comment about Denver and Indianapolis, first of all, Indianapolis is a pretty cool town. There's a lot of talent there, but maybe the owners of Intellistack like to ski. I don't know.
It could be.
They like to ski rather than do motor racing. Yeah.
It has to be personal too, but obviously there's a attracting talent is a initiative as well. It's not
that
a
baseball team though, right? The Rockies. They lost 20.
I think it's a motor racing thing. They're fed up with the ovals. They want to go to Pikes Peak.
Yeah,
do the hill climbs.
But it's
just created a hill for themselves to climb.
Yeah. So who knows why they move it? I'm from the Midwest, and Indianapolis is a pretty significant city. There's a lot of IndyCar racing. There's a lot of people there. They attract a lot of stuff, sports and non-sports. But it could be personal. This is Intellistack company is not that large of a company. It looks like they have like 200-300 employees. Is that right? So they're not looking. So the move doesn't. It sounds a little bit more personal than business, but who knows? But skiing's a big deal. My father, he used to have an ERP company. He opened up another location in Denver, and it was either his partner was going to move or we were going to move. And I'm like, we need to move. Let's go. Because I was like, 10, and my mom would not let it happen. But I used to meet him there, like on every month in the winter, and go skiing on the weekends because he was there, like once or twice a month for a week. But Denver's a very cool town, and it's got a lot of young talent. So to your point, Donald and Brian, it's probably has a plethora of opportunity to gain new talent that they might not be able to get in other places. But like you said, remote is a big deal. We all work remote, so not sure if that makes a big difference once you get the skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, there is a big war for AI talent, so maybe that has something to do with it. And I don't know that Denver's a hotbed of AI talented, young developers, but maybe. So maybe that's part of the driver is trying to get, since they're moving into AI and everybody's fighting for talent there. So.
Yep.
Well, that was my first thought. And my second thought, which may not be relevant to this one, but I bet it's something which is going to be relevant in the future, is whether this was a jurisdictional issue and whether Colorado has a particularly AI-friendly data protection regulations. Indiana's data protection regulations haven't come into play yet. I know they've been passed, but they don't become. I think it's next year that they become active. And I've already had a number of people ask me, and it's not an area I specialize in, but they've asked me about, particularly on the West Coast, about the difference and whether they can sort of arbitrage their location according to different regulations. Unlike HIPAA, which applies across the entire country, data privacy regulations are surprisingly localized, and there are important differences. And perhaps for AI, Colorado may be a bit further forward, a bit more forward-looking than Indiana. I don't want to downplay Indiana, but it wouldn't surprise me.
So, Robert, did I hear this right? That your father had an ERP company? Is that what you mentioned? Okay, and what is that called? Like Kramer ERP? Because you can definitely find Gupta ERP, and we can have a little competition here.
Yeah, it was called. The name of the company was called Parasol Systems, like an umbrella of software, but the application was called ProChem, and it was specifically.
I've heard of that.
I have to
specifically for chemical distributors and manufacturers. So it was funny. Hopefully you have it. If you haven't, no big deal. But it was, really for that $100 million chemical distributor manufacturer, and it was one of those things where when I went to go to college, I said, "Don't ever call me to work for you. I'm out. I'm going to work for myself. I don't want to work for you." Because I saw him work, so hard, and it was something I didn't want to, be accounted to my dad. So I went to Chicago. I was very unsuccessful. I came back. I said, "Hey, can I work for you?" So I ended up working for him for about 8-9 years and helped him rebrand that software. And it was it's one of those things which was extremely industry specific, but I learned it from the ground up. I understand the intricacies of ERP and, how it all connects. And I mean, I sat in 1,000 demos. When I left that company, he ended up selling it shortly after that. I'm like, I couldn't go sit in another demo again because it was, and I walked so many manufacturing facilities. I'd fly to a city, drive to the manufacturing plant, and then sit there all day, fly back, get home like at midnight. Some of my friends would be like, "So how was Chicago?" I'm like, "I don't know. I mean, I didn't see it, because you're like in these all day demos." But so these softwares that are industry specific. Sorry to go on a tangent here. It's really important because it does things like create the MSDSs or the C of A's or track unit of measures and, translate different languages. And, it allows these companies to be reliant on something that can help their business grow. And so, yeah, it was like learning calculus. You don't want to learn it, but you did. I learned ERP that way. And it was an advantage to me. And I never thought I'd really use it until I came back to being an analyst. And I was having a conversation with the person I work for, and he's like, "So do you know anything about ERP?" And because I didn't really put it on my CV because I didn't think it was really relevant anymore. And I go, "Yeah, I had this going on in the past." He's like, "Well, that's kind of a big deal." I said, "Well, so here I am." Anyway,
so now I know, Robert, why you are so emotional about change management, because every single ERP vendor I know in their next life, they want to do change management.
Yep. I saw failure, when you see that, how to like address it a little bit. But yeah, all the implementations were pretty successful, but it was because of the processes. And, but everything that you all do is about processes. And, if you stick to those, you can pretty much get through it. But if you don't, every time you sell an ERP, service, Sam, everybody seems like they're gun ho, but then like 2 months later, they're all like worn out, right? And because you got to get them past that gun ho stage, because it's not going to be fun. But you have to modernize, and all these applications that we're talking about. That modernization is a big deal, and you can't compete without software and innovation because your competitors are doing it. Yeah. But anyway. But it's all fun, and that's how I got into the ERP and et cetera. So let's go to Kognitos Neurosymbolic AI platform launch. That's a lot of words there, and I don't know a ton about them, but supposedly this is promising to have a hallucination-free automation through its patented process refinement engine. Does this help, and set the course for what they're trying to do for their customers, for them, for their competition? It seems like, does this hit mostly with RPA vendors and new standards with governance and things of that nature and explainability? Thoughts?
I just want to start
well,
with
this is supposed to be, they call themselves English as code and natural language-based AI acceleration, but then they have to invent a new term to describe it, like neurosymbolic. I mean, what on earth does that mean? So if you're going to call yourself
so
English as
Kognitos
code
didn't
and natural
invent that
language,
term, though. Yeah, this isn't something that they branded. Neurosymbolic AI is a branch of AI that's evolved out of research.
No,
going back to 2022, I think.
Yeah,
I
so
know,
very
but it
interesting.
just
So
seems
maybe I'm definitely looking for a one-on-one on long tail automation challenges. I don't know if somebody can coach me here. What is that? How does that work? Maybe Brian or Donald?
I just, if I could get the chance, let's talk about neurosymbolic AI a bit, because it's a funny word. And I think the first time you read it, you're like, wait a minute, aren't words symbolic? Like, how is this different from other AI? But it is, the idea is that, while generative AI is trained on language, neurosymbolic AI brings another set of logical rules to sort of check the probabilistic outcomes of AI against a deterministic set of what can be true, right? So the idea is that you want to eliminate hallucinations. Now, the problem with that is that it's more rigid, right? So, generative AI is quite good at no matter what you throw on it, it'll always give you something back, right? Now, how accurate it is, that's the question. But it's always going to try to integrate the new input into something that's going to be useful for the user. You can break a neurosymbolic system, right? Because if you go outside of like the logical rules, it doesn't know what to do with that, and it doesn't give you the output, which is maybe what you want, right? Because you might have a process that just says it has to come within certain boundaries, or else don't go forward, right? So that's the concept of neurosymbolic AI. Now with Kognitos, right? Now that they've productized this, the buyers have to ask a lot of questions about, well, how does that deterministic aspect work? Is that going to align with my business rules, and how often am I actually going to achieve that outcome in the real world when I'm bringing it to bear on the data that I encounter every day?
I mean, I think to be
Yeah.
fair to them, I mean, I was being a little sarcastic about them, but they are tackling one problem in particular that I'm interested in that's really been very difficult is when you automate these systems, and especially when you automatically or autonomously automate these systems, then documenting what is done. I've seen several attempts at automation where there has been hallucinations in the documentation because the documentation is generated. And that can be a real problem. I mean, there's nothing worse than having an automated system which is documented with hallucinations. So if they're actually tackling that problem, and I think the neurosymbolic approach is actually good because it's grounded not in LLMs, but in a system which is designed to be deterministic rather than non-deterministic, then I think they're probably onto a good thing here. But I think it'd be super interesting to see how successful they are at it, because there's a lot of fluff in this press release that didn't give me confidence.
I mean, just the name. But I was, you got me at neurosymbolic. I'm like, yes, that sounds cool. I want that. No, I think part of the point here is that that as you automate different processes, you can't always solve it with the same approach. And this is a different approach for certain kinds of processes that you need to automate, but you don't want that variability in the outcomes. You need more specific controlled outcomes. So I think it's interesting, and I think you're going to see more of these types of permutations of automation that go into much more specialty areas. Some will be general, purpose agentic, and then some are going to be, much more specialized. That's kind of how the tech market almost always evolves, right?
Yeah, and whether it's neurosymbolic AI or if it's other techniques to address this problem of hallucinations, this is a great opportunity for vendors that are looking to help enterprise get value out of their AI, because where certain processes hallucinations doesn't matter so much, in other processes it's a deal breaker, and it means that you can't automate with that technology. So look out for these type of solutions where vendors are going to try to eliminate the hallucinations or check your work against a deterministic system to make sure your outputs are accurate.
Interesting. So when we were at ProChem, we had somebody that specifically manually did all the documentation. So this is a huge, ERP application. So would this help automate that documentation by looking at the program and actually spitting it out, or would that be the Intellistack company, or both combined?
Good question.
Yeah.
The documentation for these ERP applications or for any SaaS application has to be automated. So what are they using to actually do that? There has to be an AI kind of a structure there. But this neurosymbolic one, because of the way that it uses the cognitive approach, I think would offer some really interesting capabilities to things of that nature, where it's more intuitive answers. Brian, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the documentation is one aspect of what this is claiming to do, right? Like, this is saying that we're going to help you accelerate all parts of your automation pipeline. So whether it's executing the process, which testing, deployment, etc., the documentation is so key when you automate, right? And it all goes back to process. That's what we always tell our clients is no matter how good your technology is, it'll claim that it automates all these things for you. But if you don't have the right process defined and agreed upon by everybody at the company as being the right way to do it, you can't go forward with something like this. So it doesn't come, it's going back to the easy button. It's not an easy button because you still have to know how you execute. It's not doing that part for you.
Can the documentation be more intuitive where if you're not doing it right, it tells you?
So,
right.
Yeah, so Robert, I'm probably going to have one comment on that documentation, I guess. So when you look at the documentation, especially in the agentic AI world, the documentation is ChatGPT, and which bothers me a little bit. I'll tell you why. Because, earlier in the days when I was doing reviews for these enterprise software, I was looking for 2 videos. I didn't have anything without putting my email, which I didn't want to put because I didn't want to access any sort of gated content because that would be illegal. But in this case right now, if you go to ChatGPT, it knows about objects and classes and tables of every single software out there. How did we get there? Because now everything is open. So that documentation is ChatGPT now.
Well, I mean, I would say that the move towards conversational interfaces on all these systems is something you're going to continue to see happen. And help, documentation, all those things, having a conversational way to interface with that and interact with that could be very useful for users. So not necessarily just ChatGPT, but in general, applying a conversational UI to the front of documentation makes it more accessible.
I think it's also increasingly important to think of the distinction between a help system and a documentation system. A help system is an interface to a documentation system. And I think when you say ChatGPT is the documentation, it's actually the help system. And I think that is an important distinction because increasingly, especially for these very prescriptive scenarios, the documentation has to have a kind of quality of exactness that you're not going to get from AI generated systems, but they make an excellent interface to the documentation system.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we're about at a wrap. So let's kind of go through, the final, words here. So my thought is, do you guys agree or disagree with work, since we talked about this, remote versus in the office, and why? So as a conclusion, and meaning, do you feel, and you can even segment it, where the younger, generation, it's helpful for them to be in the office versus people who older, they get it, or everybody needs to be in the office, or everybody needs to be remote. Brian, to you
If
first.
my office was in Indiana, I'd probably rather be remote.
Agreed.
Brian, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to take the analyst cheat here and just say it depends on your organization context, right? Like, I hate these all these announcements of banks are saying, okay, everybody back to the office 5 days a week, and not to pick on banks, but I do see that industry is really driving people back to the office. And is there any thought going into like what is the value of these people all sitting in their cubicles next to each other? Or, if you're going into the office and having Zoom calls with external clients all day anyway that you could doing at home, and you're not actually connecting with your colleagues face to face, which I'd expect would be the value, then what's the point, right? But if you're going in and you're working with people and communicating face to face, and you're trying to do things like innovation and creativity, then I think great, yeah, there is value in getting together. Does it have to be every day? Maybe not.
Donald, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the depends answer is good. I mean, I work from home, so I'm in the office every day. But I think people talk about it's more productive to be in the office, but none of those companies actually have good benchmark measures of how productive they were previously. I would love someone to show me a benchmark of how things had changed, and then say, based on the benchmark, rather than the manager's gut feel, that this is the decision we're going to make. But I haven't seen that.
Good point. Michael?
I'm not a fan of the big brother management system. So I think you have to hire people you trust and trust those people and base everything you do on the outcomes, not on the process. I don't care how they do it as long as they get the right outcome, and it's not illegal, of course. And I think I've worked remote forever, and I think that it's an easy way and a good way for a lot of people. Are there things that need to be in person? Sure. And for those, be in an office, be in somebody else's office. I don't know. But I hate the conversation that, oh, I can't see my employees, so I don't think they're working. Then you need to relearn your skills because you're a terrible manager.
Yeah, there's micro versus macro, and macro managers are fantastic. I think you have to trust your employees. You give them the ability to be have that autonomy, like giving them unlimited vacation, giving them the ability to come in the office. They come in when they need to. You know that they're getting stuff done because you look at what they're producing. Yeah. But call a spade a spade. Some people need the interaction, and those people cannot work from home because they can't get situated and comfortable and productive. I feel like when I'm in an office, I get bothered too much, and I'd rather get my stuff done. And at home, I'm very productive. It doesn't matter. But I think it just depends. And I also think these companies sign these long-term leases that are expensive, and they have to take advantage of.
That's another point.
Yeah, that's a big point. And I think the workforce has shifted, but the more experienced people probably do better at home. But maybe there is no way to delineate. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, personally, I'm slightly old school, even though my hair might not tell the same story. I'm definitely old school in terms of preferring for the office. But at the same time, I'm in the industry where we have to offer a remote option. I don't have a cloud to say you are AI fired today because you're not coming to the office. So that's why, naturally I work from home as well because nobody in our industry goes to the office. But personally, I would love to go to the office because I think I would have better life if I went there. So that's my take.
Why would you have a better life?
Because of the interaction, because of the missing social interaction right now. Since I'm working remote, it's just not the same relationship. Yeah, and I want to have life.
All right, let's get that done. All right, so hopefully, do you travel a little bit for your work? If you do that, sometimes that's a good filler.
It's not the same thing. Okay, not the same thing. Yeah.
Well, you have to join some of us on the road, and we'll have dinner.
As long as that is going to be Kramer sponsored.
It might be. So back to you to close.
All right, guys. So that's it for today. I know we are 3 minutes over right now. I don't know if you guys had meetings. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.